Hi there, in this video I will show you how to put together the Ghost Pumpkin Luminary SVG file from Simply Crafty SVGs. Now if you watch any of my other videos, I like to get some of the piecing done before. So this is just the boo tag that comes with it. It's optional to cut. This is how it layers together. You see I already inked the top boo cutout already. And I hadn't done the bottom part, so the white in the background is a little bit too white because I inked that front part. So I used some black soot distress ink with my distress tool to go ahead and see if I can match it up. So I just want to get it a little bit muddier. So if you've never used distress ink, it just kind of giving it more of a rougher feel. So I'm also going to use this distress oxide, which is the marmalade. I can't remember I'll put it below, but it's the marmalade, and I'm just kind of giving it more of the yellow orangish tinge that the top has. Spiced marmalade, that's what it is. So just distressing it a little bit. And then we'll go ahead and I'll show you, I did already the eyes for the ghost panels. So again, this is the black soot distress ink. Just kind of rub it in to get the edges. And I'm really careful, try to be careful. I always use just a scrap piece of paper underneath. The reason I do that is because even though I have a craft mat, I don't like wiping it all the time. So, but I do that every once in a while. So just going in and just coming inward if you've never watched some of the distress ink videos before. And I just want to get the eyes a little blacker. And I did this with the pumpkin panels too. So I'm not going to show that, but this is the same technique. And the other thing that I would suggest if you do this is to do the same with the actual box pieces. And now you can see how it's going to look somewhat. And I still have to do the mouthpiece. So with that, I'm really careful because I'm really bad with ink. So full disclosure, this was not the first middle piece I did. It didn't come out so great. So I know I'm off the screen a little bit, but I use the Fantastics. And it's not the greatest with this, but it allows me to get in like a pencil or pen and get around the edges. I usually use the Fantastics with my actual chalk, but this time I was just trying to match up the color. So I'm just being really careful. And then I will get a little less careful to blend it. So with the actual, so these are the panels that go for the ghost. So what you might want to do is do this with the same pieces on the back if you end up doing white. The reason I have them different, if you do use this, you need to be really careful, else it might go everywhere. So I'm really angling it. But if you don't ink the box portion, the actual the body of the ghost or the pumpkin, then you might be able to see it if the panels don't line up the way you want them to. So that's up to you. But I did include panels twofold. When you do a white item that's going to have a little light inside, sometimes you can see the panels. So not the panels, the tabs that you glued it together. So to have the panels on top just kind of brings it all together, and then you can use an embossing folder if you want, or pattern paper, that kind of thing. So now I'm satisfied with that. So I'm just trying to get all this messy work out of the way so I can go wash my hands before I assemble. So now we have all these. I'm going to put them to the actual ghost panels to the side. I'm not going to ink anything else on the ghost other than the actual box portion. You'll see it's already done. We'll go ahead and piece this together. And if you've never done one of these before, it's that top part. The middle part kind of acts as the middle pieces per se. This is just a way to do it without doing the whole word and still getting the effect without having some intricate thing to cut out. It should line up, so when you just do this panel, be careful so you don't move it around a lot so you don't get glue on the black part that you can see through. I did that on the exclamation mark. But just go ahead and feel around the edges and line it up. And then you'll see that the next white piece of paper will show through to look like the middles of the letters. Well, it is the middle of the letters of the B and the OO. So just carefully add glue to the back of this piece. Make sure you try to keep away from the edges of those openings so the glue doesn't leak through. That's true of almost everything we do. And there'll be a blank tag in the extra stuff folder of your SVG file if you purchase this, so you can put whatever you'd like on top of this tag or omit it and use your own. So I'm just cutting a piece of foam tape, Scotch foam tape, to put on the back. You could put on the back of that to pop it up off that tag, or put it in the back. Now I should have made it a little bit less tall, but you'll see that later on, because I didn't want it to go too far up, and I wanted it to be attached to the ghost. So I just go ahead and center this, and then we'll just put that aside. Now we'll start putting together the actual pumpkin piece portion of it. So here are the pieces that we're going to assemble. So what I would do is fold them first on the score lines. So I've already scored them, but make sure they're good and scored. I am not using a maker. I don't believe that it really scores as well as it should, but if you do, just make sure all the folds are crisp. And then be careful as you fold these. I'm just showing you how it folds, because that's the left side of the face. And then the middle. So I'm putting them in order as I do so. So I'm just kind of pushing them up there so I know which order they go in. So there's a total of 6, and 3 of them have cutouts, and 3 of them are just a regular shape that are the same. So just so you know, the only differences are those 3 with the face cutouts. So once you have them all scored, I'm just putting them in order of how I want to put them together and pushing them up so I can just visually do it rather than worry about what order they should be in. So I like to get those prepped. So as with everything that I do like this, I like to anchor one tab. So I'm just lining up that right edge to the tab fold on that top tab and making sure that top lines up. And you want to hold it. And you could do the first 2 tabs too. It's a fairly straight shot, but I'm just showing you this is regularly what I do. So later on I will anchor it to 2 tabs. And then you can either do a couple tabs and glue the rest of them, or do them all at once. It just depends how quick you are. With practice you become faster at it. Because now I'm just going to line up that edge to the tab fold, and I'm always running my finger over that edge to make sure they're lined up, and also getting rid of excess glue, and that's why I have that little wet paper towel. And this may be going fast for you. If it is, just go ahead and pause the video. I realize if this is something new to you that it takes more time. I've gotten much faster because of practice, but it does take a lot of practice. So here we have the top portion of the head. So now that you see the left, and now we're going to glue those 2 tabs at the top, and then the bottom piece. So here you can line it up at the top, or if you feel better, you can put glue on both of these tabs and line it up. Here we go, to where the eye opening is. But it's really right at the score line, so you should be okay. And then we'll just continue to glue them together. So these, when you talk about these little side pieces like this, just take the time, line it up, and hold it extra long because it's just one little piece. And just make sure that that edge lines up to the tab fold. And just, that's where you don't want to skimp on time. And then the last two tabs down there to attach this little piece. So we'll continue doing that. So I'm going to walk you through the rest of the facial part, and then you can just watch the rest of it without being annoyed by my voice. But you see, I'm just lining up that top one. I'm not saying I'm annoying, but you know, sometimes you just want to watch the video. Otherwise, you're just going to hear idle chatter, and I really don't have that much to say. I guess I do, but gives you a break, gives me a break a little bit. So that's where we want to take our time, because we really want to line it up well. So I am taking a little extra time than I normally would. So make sure you don't move on too quickly so you don't pull off a piece. So you can see that's how that's going to go on. And when I talked about earlier about inking the eyes, so as I noted earlier, I actually took the pumpkin panels and did what I did for the ghost panels, which are ink the eyes around the eye sockets and the nose and the mouth. Well, what I ended up doing afterwards was I forgot to ink these, so I kind of went in with that little Fantastics and inked these with black ink after I got the panels on, because I could kind of see them through. You know, they were offset just a smidgen, enough to notice. So if you did want to do that before, that's what I was talking about earlier. So again, when you're lining this up, you want to make sure you get that edge lined up right there in place. And the nice thing is that you can reach in at different spots in the front of the face. Just be careful. You know, this is in two pieces, so it's a little bit more fragile than most designs I do like this. Then we'll attach those bottom two tabs. So I'm holding that extra long again. And then I wanted to make sure that that was good and secure before I attach that last one. So now you can watch me put together the rest of the pumpkin, and then I'll be back to you shortly. Now I just wanted to come back before we glued the final tabs and glued it shut. For those that don't know, sometimes this is the hardest part of doing something that's this shaped. So there are a couple methods. One method is to glue a tab on each side, and then basically go in and glue the rest of the tabs, or just fold them over. So I'm going to do that. There's other methods too where you can just put glue on. So I'm going to put glue on all the tabs. It depends on the size of the project when I do that. When I do the ghost lid, I will just glue it a little bit differently, so to tell you what the difference is, but also size matters as well. So the biggest thing is getting the tabs lined up properly. So take your time, but not too much time so your glue dries. But worst case scenario, you should be able to reach in and add more glue if you needed to, but hopefully if you could get it done fast. So you could just glue the top and the bottom and make sure they're lined up, otherwise things will get kind of wonky. But this is the reason why we do an edge towards the back of the design rather than the front. So once we have that in place, we'll reach in and basically apply pressure to each of the tabs. So we're just lining it up carefully. So I'm on that second tab, then I'm reaching in from the bottom to get that other tab right there, and then again in there to get that tab. So you can see it's just a matter of patience and lining it up. Just make sure you get enough glue so the glue doesn't dry before you're done. That's finished, and you'll notice I'm using two types of glue, art glitter glue and Scotch quick dry. There is a reason. I was having some difficulty with my little glue bottle, so when I needed more glue I used the Scotch quick dry. And I was just inking the edges towards the back, not the front but the back. But you could do it however you want your pumpkin to look. So now we're going to add the panels. So the biggest thing with the panels, I want to get them situated correctly. And we don't want to put that bottom part on until we put the panels, so you can reach in and apply pressure and do that all that fun stuff. So the little hexagon you see to the right will be the bottom of the pumpkin. So what I want to show you is that you could easily flip them over and you can see they're different sizes. So I would take one of the cutout faces that you know what the top is and make sure they all are the same shape. Then once I know they're situated correctly, I just put them on the table that way so I don't make any mistakes. So I'm not going to show you every single panel, but most of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch glue bottles here. I have a Scotch quick dry, which I still like. I like the art glitter glue for most everything, but I still use Scotch quick dry as well. It's thicker than art glitter glue, and it does dry quicker. So when we're put on the panel, so obviously we're doing the solid ones, we're going to line it up at the top first. So I like to line it up at the top and then get it placed at the top and then apply pressure at the bottom. But I kind of did it both at the same time, but if you start at the top and go to the bottom, usually you're okay. We're not going to show you this whole one here, but if you go ahead, it's the same thing, and you'll do that for all the solid panels, and then I'll show you how to put the face ones on. And the only difference is that I just glue them a little bit different because I want different areas to stick down. And you might want to take a second to make sure it's oriented correctly like that. So I put all these solid ones on and I put the right facial piece on. So now I'm going to put the left facial piece with the cutout and then the middle ones. So again, you want to curl them just to help you. So when it comes to the pieces around the face, as I apply glue, I kind of go around the edges like I did, but I'm just being careful that I put a little bit of glue a little bit closer to all those cutout edges because I want it to stick down. I don't want them to flip up. So I just had to make sure I had it in the right place. So now I'm going to, as I'm placing it, I'm kind of lightly placing it and making sure that it lines up with the cutouts. I know you can't quite see it, so I'm angling here, but you want to make sure it lines up to where the cutouts are on the box piece. Or lantern, whatever you want to call it. It can be box too. And then apply pressure around the edges and specifically around the cutout areas as well so they don't flip up. And that's what I was doing, applying pressure around that eye. Okay, now not much different. The only focus here is just basically making sure that you get the areas around the cutouts glued down. And it's doing twofold. It's hiding those score lines and cleaning it up. Or you know, these panels, what's kind of cool, I didn't do it because I kind of wanted to look a certain way, but you could go ahead and emboss it or use pattern paper. But I wanted a more traditional look. But I do look forward because I know there's a lot of people out there that kind of go crazy with pumpkins and stuff. But we'll see. We'll see if anybody actually likes this design. But, you know, I've been wanting to do this for a while. So I'm really being careful not to get too much glue towards the edges. That's another thing because you don't really want it leaking out. So I'm carefully lining it up at the top, and then I'm not really applying too much pressure until I get it in place. So you can kind of stick your fingers through the holes to get it lined up, whatever it takes. And then I'm kind of going down there near the teeth and the nose to make sure I apply pressure on those areas. And I don't know if you can notice, but I talked about inking the pumpkin piece around the eyes and the nose earlier, and you kind of can see, I mean, it might not bother you, but there you can see it a little bit because I didn't line it up perfectly. So that's where inking that would have been helpful prior. So we're doing the bottom piece, and then that will complete the panels. So that one does take, you have to make sure you line it up and line those teeth up. So don't put a lot of pressure until you get it in place. And then once you get it in place, you can apply all that pressure. But we don't want that part flipping up. So the hardest part really, panel wise, is the facial components around those cutout openings. But we want to make sure we can see, you know, the battery operated candle through it. So I'm just going to ink the edges a little bit because I'm trying to rough it up because I kind of want to look a little bit grungy. So I'm just taking my little chalk ink and just randomly throwing it on there. And I could have done this before, but to me it was just easier doing it after. And all this is an effect that I want to have. So you can do whatever you like. Because you can't really see that top edge, but if somebody pulls it off, they'll be able to see it. So that's up to you. So now we want to add that bottom piece. So it doesn't really matter which tab you do it on. But I'm going to attach one side first to anchor it. And then I'm going to make sure that the texture side is facing down. So if somebody flipped it over, they can't see it. Now, it's not a big deal if you can see the tabs on the bottom. So if you prefer to put the panel inside and put the tabs on the bottom, that's up to you. It just, at this point, because of the shape, this is just as easy. So once it's good and anchored, just go ahead and add glue in all these tabs. And just make sure there's enough glue so it doesn't dry before you get to it. That's what I used to do all the time. And then we're just going to carefully place it down, and I kind of squish it in and different sides to get it to fit best it can. I don't think there's anything called perfect in crafting, but as best you can get it to go, and then rubbing around the tabs. And that'll just apply pressure, and then I can just flip it over and apply pressure from within because it's a large enough opening. And my hand does fit in barely, but since I have kind of a large hand, I'm just going to use the chopstick. My little handy dandy wooden chopstick. And that completes the pumpkin portion. So we'll move on to the ghost lid. Here's all the pieces for the ghost lid portion. So you can see that we have the face and two eyes. So the biggest thing, what I'll do is put it in order. So we know it's the left eye, the middle, the right eye. So we want to make sure the panels are in order. And you can see that there's some have a little curve at the bottom, some curve up, some curve down. So we want to put them in order that way. Because the solid ones, there's two that curve down and one that curves up. So you just want to make sure they're in order so you can put it together properly. So I'm going to start with that one, and I'm putting them in order of how I'm going to assemble them. And then I'll stack them up the way they need to be put together. So I haven't pre-folded these or on the score lines. So you want to go ahead and score them. So we have that. There's actually a score at the top two that I missed. So there's three major score lines. And it kind of flares out at the bottom, so I'm kind of curling it as I do it. So we'll do the second one. I forgot to score it up there. So you can see you want to carefully score it. There's actually 4 score lines on each piece. So I'll kind of curl around at the top and curl out towards the bottom. So again, I like this little bottle which has our glitter glue for fine tabs. And normally I like to use that for that. I can control the flow better, and it's a thinner glue than Scotch Quick Dry. So we're going to go ahead and anchor. So this is a much smaller piece to anchor. So this is similar to the pumpkin, except for the fact we have a tab at the top. So you want to line up that right edge to the left tab fold, and then we'll continue down. So I did the 2 tabs first, and it's the same technique as the pumpkin. And then I'm just kind of holding that second tab as I flip it up to add glue on the rest of the tabs. So as I go down, I'm just running my thumb over to make sure that that edge is lined up to the tab fold. And usually I can tell if I'm a little bit off, if there's like a little gap. You can see the edge of where the tab is. It helps to add glue on the rest of the tabs though. See, even the white glue on white threw me off because I thought I had glue on there. Then if you get it all lined up, that little bottom edge will line up like so. So there's 2 pieces together. We're going to add the next one. So it's a similar process. The only difference is that it's smaller than the actual pumpkin piece. So it does get tighter as you're gluing towards the end. But same thing. So add glue on those 2 tabs. And just make sure that the top of that eye is lined up when you line up the tabs. So you can kind of lightly get that first one attached or you can start with the eyepiece. You can see how it's aligned. And I had a dog just walk in and shake, collar shake. They feel like they're being neglected when I do these videos. So we'll go ahead and just glue the rest of those. And just make sure you line it up again so that top edge meets that left eye. And then we'll just continue with the rest of the box. So go ahead and watch this and I'll be back. Okay, as I stated, it's a little bit different for this top piece because it's much smaller to close it up. So what we're going to do, we're going to add glue to 2 tabs on the top. So this is just a different way of gluing it closed. I mean, you could have done this on the pumpkin too. So it's a little bit sped up, but I'm trying to get in the right angle to get my finger in to apply pressure on that top tab. And I want to be careful because if you move it wrong, it'll pull the other tab off. So then get that second tab in place. And then making sure it's lined up. You have to try to line them up on this one. And then line up that bottom edge one. And then I'm just going to flip the tabs over inside. I'm going to add glue to all those tabs. And just carefully go up and down and apply pressure to get them in place. So a lot of times it takes a lot of movement to get it, like to get your hands in the right place, but with practice it gets much easier than getting the excess glue off. So now that that's together, I'm going to show you these tops. So there's two different tops, one smaller than the other. The one we want is the smaller one, and put aside the larger one. So the larger one will be put on after the panels. It's an optional thing because if you use pattern paper you might need something else, and it's slightly larger. Because as you make it, you assemble it, sometimes it expands on the top a little bit, especially if you don't glue the edges close together. But if you didn't like that one, you could always cut another one of the same size. So we're going ahead and just adding a little glue on these top tabs here. Again, use a small hexagon cut. And just line it up. You can try to squish it in a little bit to let it come in, but sometimes it just doesn't, so that's why I have that second piece just in case. If you make it all white, you may not even need that second piece. That's up to you. I'm still showing you because somebody might need it. And you can see it's a little bit larger. And we'll just put that aside for later. So now we'll put the panels on. This is not a whole lot different than the pumpkin. The only difference is I put them in order, just like I did the actual box portion, or the lid. We want to make sure we put the right panels on the right panels on the actual right sections. So remember, some curve down, some curve up, especially the solid pieces. Obviously it's not so hard to figure out the ones with the cutout eyes. So again, this is a little bit different, so we kind of curled it. As you saw earlier, we kind of curled it around on the top and then out on the bottom. So you can go ahead and continue to do that. We want to make sure that there's glue around the edges. And now I'm switching bottles really quick because I was having problems with my glue bottle again. But you want to make sure that you have glue around the eyes just like we did with the pumpkin, and make sure you get them in place. So it's pretty much the same, so go ahead and watch this portion and I'll be back shortly. Now that all the panels are on, we could always add that top piece, and I already did that. Add the little top section. Again, if you don't feel like you need it, don't use it if you're using the same color as the lid. And I did ink the edges a little bit, the bottom edges. And now you can see how it goes on. So the only thing left to do is to add the boo tag. Again, I used just a little bit too much foam tape for my application, but it really doesn't hurt anything. You only see it if you lift it up. Because I want it a little bit like at the bottom edge, or you can put it to the side too. That's up to you. But I'll show you when I'm second guessing myself as I'm doing this. And you can see if I flip it over, you can see that there's excess hanging out. So just make sure if you do the same way I do, just put it at the top. And then I'll show you with a candle in it. If you do like this video, please hit the thumbs up below and or subscribe. I would surely appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed this project. Thank you so much for watching.